And we even discussed the possibility of them hiring me on an ad hoc basis to consult on public records cases, which I've done for a number of law firms. And during that telephone conversation, I actually said to them that, you know, if a better way of doing this, for a whole host of reasons, in my opinion, is to have a nonprofit that's actually doing a lot of this litigation, as opposed to having individuals doing it. And their response was, you know, sort of to laugh and say, well, you're really going to enjoy the conversation you're getting ready to have with Marty. I mean, they clearly knew that this was part of what Marty had intended. And in fact, I was so confident of that, the week leading up to my visit with him, I sat down in front of my computer and I came up with a budget. I really believed this is what they were going to propose, that you know, that they would create some sort of foundation that would have resources. And ironically, the budget I came up with was virtually identical to what Marty proposed. Now, I was only going to think that maybe I get paid $60,000 a year, and I think I was guessing about $250,000 a year in total budget. It ended up being closer to $300,000 and him paying me $120,000. Yeah, it was clear that there was, and again, even now, I have no objection to that, the concept of a man who's wealthy funding a not-for-profit that does real meaningful civil rights advocacy and operating completely independent of his influence and completely independent of any outside influence, period.
And I understand that was the rules you laid down from
Right.
the very beginning.
Right.
Now, what I want to be clear on is even before this concept of Marty funding and causing to be formed a not-for-profit, you had discussions with Jonathan O'Boyle regarding having his firm represent you and your entities, or you or your associates or people that you were assisting
Yes.
in public records litigation in the state.
Yes.
And who was it that said during these conversations prior to talking to Marty, who is it that brought up the idea of forming a not-for-profit? Was that Jonathan, Ryan, you?
I brought it up, and simply because, you know, I really do believe that if you're going to do a lot of advocacy, for all the reasons that you know, the protections you get from having a corporation, and also, frankly, from a credibility perspective, to actually have a legitimate entity that's going to defend the public's right to know, I thought that would just be a better way of doing it. And as soon as I mentioned it, they, you know, not in a bad way, but they, you know, laughed, like, you know, obviously you and Marty are you know, already thinking the same way. You're really going to like this conversation you have with Marty.
So that was Jonathan that said that
It was
to you?
Jonathan and Ryan, yeah.
Okay, so Jonathan knew that his father was going to propose that to you, it seemed from your conversation.
That was very much my understanding, yes.
Okay.
Now, and when I was setting up this meeting to go down, when I went down there, I actually had expected that I was going to meet with Marty and Jonathan and probably Ryan. And when I mentioned that to Marty in an email, his response was, I want to meet with you privately first, which was fine. And that's why he and I met at his home. And then from there, he and I went and met Jonathan at a restaurant.
Okay, and before you continue, I'd like to follow up on just one other area,
Sure.
if you don't mind. And I'm sorry if I'm
please
taking
do.
you off track. With regard to the proposal that some other not-for-profit or foundation be used, you mentioned that Jonathan proposed one, but he was on the board of it, and you rejected that idea.
I did.
Okay. Did you discuss that with just Jonathan, or did you discuss that with Marty or
No,
Ryan?
we were actually in the conference room at Marty's business, Commerce Group, which is where all of these, you know, the foundation, the Citizens Awareness Foundation, never had its own offices. You know, Marty, I thought, very generously allowed me to sort of camp out at empty desks in the building. It was very convenient, actually, because the office in Deerfield Beach also housed the law firm.
Okay, so the Commerce Group office is at what address?
I think it's 1280 West Newport Center Drive,
Okay.
Deerfield Beach 34422, I think.
And what suite number is the Commerce Group in, or does it have a suite
I
number?
don't think it's a suite number.
Okay, and so you worked out of the Commerce Group offices?
Well, I work from my home in Lakeland, but when
But-
I went down to Deerfield Beach, that's where I went, was to the Commerce Group offices.
And was the law firm, the O'Boyle Law Firm, in the same offices
Yes.
as the Commerce Group?
Yes.
They weren't in a separate suite?
No. They were literally in a back room. It was sort of funny because they right across the hallway. I think the address across the hall is 1286. I think, and this is a facility. I don't know whether Marty owns it or leases it, but he has control of it. And they were at the very beginning stages of remodeling the space across the hall from the Commerce Group. And while that was going on, the O'Boyle Law Firm had set up shop in a back room. And it was just it was a large room. They literally, we joked about it, the wires were hanging down from the ceiling. There were no cubicles. It was just, there were desks. And it was really, really inconvenient and very annoying, actually, because if I'd sit down and have a telephone, have a face-to-face conversation with an attorney, one desk over, 6 feet away, there's another attorney. It was very chaotic.
And the Commerce Group employees could walk in and out of the law
They did
office?
walk in and out, and in fact, they shared employees.
Okay. And let me follow up on that.
Yeah.
Was there ever a separate sign and a separate door for the law office?
No.
No. So they were just, the law office was part of the Commerce Group operation?
It was housed in the Commerce Group operation.
Okay, now let's get to employees and that, because I understand your insistence that there be total independence,
Yes.
which I fully appreciate. But what I don't know the names of any of these people that are involved. So
Yeah.
I understand that Jonathan was on the board of the originally proposed foundation, which you rejected. Were there any other people on that board that you
I
thought
don't know.
constituted a conflict?
I don't know.
Okay, and as far as when the foundation was formed,
The Citizens Awareness Foundation.
yes, can you tell me what the names of the
Yes.
board members were and who they were?
Yes. William Ring, Bill Ring.
Who is Mr. Ring? I've
He is the.
seen him once.
Yeah, he is the. He's an attorney. I understand he's not really practiced law in the traditional sense much. I have been told, has been working with Marty for about 30 years.
In his business.
In his business, the Commerce Group.
So Mr. Ring was not a member of the O'Boyle Law Firm, as far as you were advised?
Not at that time, he was not.
Okay, all right.
And in fact, Bill actually represented me in one public records lawsuit against the town of Gulfstream.
William Ring is Bill.
Yeah, Bill Ring. My understanding, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I was told that he had never even filed a lawsuit before. So when I retained him to represent me in a lawsuit.
And keep in mind, you don't have to disclose
No, I'm
unless you
happy
choose to.
disclose. No,
Okay,
I'm happy to.
okay.
I mean, literally, it was, can you help us draft the lawsuit? And I've done a lot of drafting.
He asked you to draft, help him?
It was either he or Ryan Whitmer, who at the time, Ryan, I think, had already sat for the bar, hadn't been licensed yet, so was essentially functioning as his paralegal.
As Mr. Ring's
As
paralegal?
Mr. Ring's paralegal, yeah.
And who asked you to draft the
I
lawsuit?
think Ryan did.
For Mr. Ring?
Yeah, on behalf, yeah, I don't think it was anything inappropriate, but he was communicating to me from Bill Ring, can you help us? I have done a lot of pro se litigation.
Right.
There's in fact, I'm very frequently, this is an issue that comes up with opposing counsel very often, that they see the same template over and over again. And my response is, well, of course you do. My time's not compensable, so why would I draft a lawsuit from scratch for every lawsuit? And oh yeah, by the way, it works. I've won 99-point-something% of the time. It's a good template. They actually, I think, with the lawsuit against Gulfstream, where they represented me as a plaintiff, I think it was my template they used.
Okay, did that case get settled, or?
I want to say that it did, and it wasn't for much. It was like, the number that sticks in my head was like $1,200 or something. Just whatever the legal fees were. I got nothing out of it.
Did you have a written fee agreement with Mr. Ring?
I don't recall whether we did or not.
Do you know if he ever had time records or time billings? Did you ever
Couldn't
get a
tell you.
bill? Did you ever get a bill?
I don't recall seeing a closing statement.
And so did you ever see any representation as to how much time he had spent?
I don't recall seeing anything like that.
Do you know if he did any work besides use your template to file the lawsuit?
Couldn't tell you.
Okay, so that case was pending and has been settled.
Yeah, I understand it's been settled.
And the counsel of record was not the O'Boyle law firm, it was William Ring.
Yeah, this is long before, I say long before, this is sometime in 2013.
Any other cases that were filed by Mr. Ring or anyone involving the O'Boyles in any way prior to the foundation being formed?
No, and in all fairness, that Bill's representation of me did not involve the O'Boyles. I mean, he was not representing me as I understand it. In fact, there's an email which says this, that Bill actually formed a firm in order to represent me in this case.
Okay. What was the name of the firm?
I don't remember.
Okay, so as far as you're concerned, throughout this time, Mr. Ring has his own firm he's working for, but he's also Mr. O'Boyle's business associate.
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Ring is on the board from the inception.
He was the president of the board from the very beginning.
And I guess he was, I don't want to guess, is it accurate to strike that? Who appointed Mr. Ring to the board? Was that Mr.
I have no idea.
Did Martin O'Boyle decide who was going to be on the board?
That was very much my understanding, yes.
Okay.
I had no input. I had nothing to do with that. I was told, in fact, I didn't have anything to do with the name. I was not at all affectionate towards the name. I was not enthusiastic about it, but it is what it is. And
okay. So Mr. Martin O'Boyle told you who was on the board, is
yes.
that correct? Okay.
So Bill was on the board.
Bill Ring.
And then a woman by the name of Denise DiMartini.
And who is she?
She is also, as I understand it, a longtime employee of the Commerce Group. She's been with Marty I think she's been there longer than Bill.
Okay.
I had never met her. She works from her home, as I understand it, in Merritt Island. So I would hear her name. I never met her.
Okay.
And when I talked to her the first time, because all this was happening very quickly. We met on the 22nd. I literally stayed at Marty's house for like 10 days straight. We were, I was looking at trying to hire employees, and this was a very fast-paced sort of series of events. And at one point, I needed to get a website set up for the foundation and get business cards and get a logo and that sort of thing. And I mentioned something about this to Marty, and he suggested that I contact Denise because she's really good at that kind of stuff. So I actually talked to Denise, and by the way, let me correct. I wasn't at Marty's house for 10 days. I was in South Florida for 10 days. I was at his home for several days, and then when I went down to Miami-Dade, I started staying in hotels. When I called Denise to ask for her help on a logo, and I mentioned to her about being a board member, she seemed shocked that she was a board member. She made it very clear she didn't even know she was a board member.
Okay. And what did you tell her?
I was like, well, congratulations. Apparently you're on the board. And then the other board member, the third and final board member, was a woman named Brenda Russell. And Brenda has been Marty's personal secretary for many, many years. I think she's probably been there longer than Bill and Denise. That's my impression. Very sweet lady. At least from my perception, her involvement with the foundation was minimal. She was the person that I in the beginning, gave my receipts to, for reimbursement and credit card stuff. And that was, I never dealt with Brenda in any capacity. When I did meet with the board, she was never present. Her, involvement seemed, minimal. It was striking to me in the beginning, Bill was a person who seemed to have the most knowledge and experience with open government issues, which I would describe as being pretty minimal. Denise seemed completely and utterly unknowledgeable about any open government issues at all. And Brenda was the same way.
And all three of them were employees of the Commerce Group?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons you insisted on having absolute independence?
That's exactly right. Look, I understand that, here you have this very wealthy man, Marty O'Boyle, who is financing this not-for-profit, hopefully going to become a nonprofit, and is prepared to dump hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in perpetuity, by the way. It wasn't just this is $300,000 to begin with. It was whatever it takes for as long as it takes. And I also understood both from Marty, from Ryan, and from Jonathan that Marty was financing the law firm. I don't know the details, but as I understand it, he was loaning them the money. And
Who told you that?
Marty, Jonathan, and Ryan did, on all three of them on separate occasions.
So they told you that Marty was funding the law firm?
Yes.
And loaning the money for the law firm?
Yes. I don't know how much money. I mean, the number that I heard from Marty was $1 million. I don't know whether that's true or not, or accurate or not. Maybe.
Do you know if he ever paid salaries of the law employees from the Commerce Group?
I couldn't tell you. I could tell you that the person who is handling the money is a woman by the name of Carla McClutchin, who is a Commerce Group employee. She also is a person that I dealt with for financial issues on behalf of the foundation. She's the person that got my paychecks. She's the person that I initially gave some of my receipts to Brenda, and then very shortly I was directed to start giving all that to Carla.
And Carla works for the Commerce Group?
Yes.
And did the foundation ever open a bank account?
I believe that it did. I mean, I was not a...
Was your salary paid from a Commerce Group account or from a foundation account, do you know?
I couldn't tell you. I think that because there were discussions about, in the very beginning, and I understand that I have gone from being, I mean, when I went down there to meet with Marty, I have one car. I didn't want to leave my wife and children stranded, so I rented a car, the cheapest car I could find. I'm scraping together enough money just to buy gas to get down there, so I'm doing everything on a shoestring, and so it was an awkward conversation. But I told Marty when we first got started, I said, look, I'm not in a position to incur expenses and get reimbursed. I need money up front to do this. And he was very gracious about it. He called Carl. We were in his conference room. He called Carl in and said, cut Joel a check for $1,000, and as soon as he needs more money, give him more money.
Was this before the foundation was formed?
This is, I think, when the foundation got formed.
Okay.
But at that point, he did not have any bank account. So I'm trying.
So he paid you from the Commerce Group for the
I think they marked it as a loan because I ended up giving that money back once I got reimbursed. But he was very insistent that we need to get a bank account set up for the Commerce Group. I think it was set up at BB&T. We need to get a credit card, so that Joel can use a credit card.
Did you get a credit card from him personally or from the Commerce Group or both?
I got one from Brenda that it was on, as I understood it from her, in fact there are a whole bunch of emails that support this, that the first credit card I had was on Marty's account. And I know that because it was really annoying. Because I was on the road a lot, maybe weeks at a time. And she, apparently there were a lot of people, both at the Commerce Group, that had credit cards on Marty's personal account. Because she told me that every single night I had to scan my receipts and send them to her, which was really annoying because I get into we've been on the road all day, and you get into a hotel room at 11 o'clock at night, and the last thing I want to do is sit there and scan receipts, which I would have to do every single night, all my receipts for that day. And then she very frequently would send me credit card statements that had all these charges, not just mine, but other people's, and I had to go through and identify which ones were mine.
And those were on Marty's card?
Those were on Marty's card.
While you were in Miami doing work or wherever?
Yeah, wherever, yeah. So, but at some point, within a few weeks, there was actually a credit card that said Citizens Awareness Foundation on it, had my name on it, and I was no longer, I gave them back the card that I gotten. Because I had Marty's card, but it had my name on it. It was his account with my name.
Did you reimburse Citizens Awareness for the charges, or reimburse Marty for those charges?
I turned in all my receipts.
I mean, you were paid by him, and then you were paid by Citizens Awareness account.
Well, I got an advance from the Commerce Group on a Commerce Group check for like $1,000, and I think I went back maybe a week later and needed like another $1,000, and I gave them all my receipts, and you know, I didn't have anything to do with the money.
Okay, so you didn't repay cash, you just gave them your receipts for the advance.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you, I understand.
Yeah.
All right.
And
When was the first, was there ever a board meeting after the foundation was formed, or did Marty just say, your title is chairman or something?
Well, we kind of went round and round about the title. I felt strongly. I have a number of friends who are involved with nonprofit organizations. I've personally never been a big on titles, but I was told by some people who are involved with nonprofits that you really need to be called the executive director, because apparently that matters in the world of nonprofits. I guess that's code so that we can tell each other that we're the big wheel at whatever entity we're involved with. So I told him that I wanted to be called the executive director, and he agreed to that, and so I was the executive director.
Okay, did you ever have any employment agreement, written employment agreement?
I told Marty that I wanted a contract, and this was the only, I think, the only condition that he did not agree to. I wanted a 5-year contract, and the reason I wanted a 5-year contract was I thought that would further enhance my independence. And he said no, he didn't want to do that, and then I said, well, how about a year? And he didn't want to do that. Let's just kind of see how it goes. And he had been so generous and agreeable on. I mean, he originally offered me. I think he originally offered me $75,000, and I told him no, I wanted 120. I mean, why not? I mean, and yeah, I was surprised how fast he said yes. In fact, afterwards, I thought, man, I should have held out for more. He had been so agreeable, and Marty has, up until very recently, has always been exceedingly kind, gracious, generous, very deferential to me. Just my experience with him personally have been nothing but delightful.
So you trusted that he would honor your oral agreements with regard to how the foundation would be run without a written contract?
Yeah, and a big part of that was this sense of deference that he had always given to me. That he frequently referred to me. I don't know why he did this, but he would refer to me as Dr. Chandler. That I was the guru on public record, which I don't hold myself out as that, but he very much perceived that I was sort of the expert on
Okay.
public records issues, and if I thought that we needed to do things a certain way, that he would defer to that. And I put a lot of stock in that deference, because I felt that he would continue to defer to my judgment on issues. In fact, he told me that the reason that he was hiring me was primarily because of my judgment. So that, having been communicated, made me feel a pretty high level of confidence that they're going to do things the way I think they ought to be done.
And by the same token, you didn't sign a non-compete or
I'm sorry. Yeah,
agreement or anything
I
like that?
apologize, I didn't answer your original question about our agreement. I ended up drafting a memorandum of understanding. That's the closest thing we got to a contract. And he and I batted it around. He asked me to make a number of revisions to it. I never dealt with the board on that issue. It was all with Marty. I signed it, but I never received a signed copy back from a board member, so I don't know whether they signed it or not.
Okay.
But there was no confidentiality agreement. There was no, he told me, because what I wanted to do originally was I asked for $60,000 a year and the freedom to continue to do pro se litigation. And he adamantly refused that. He was really adamant. In fact, the way he put it was, when I buy people, I want to buy all of them. And I didn't take that to be, offensive necessarily. I didn't think he was indentured servitude. I got what he meant, that he wanted 100% of my attention. So that was the only real stipulation in the memorandum of understanding that I wasn't really enthusiastic about, but about 120 grand a year and a lot of resources, I could live with it.
Did you set forth in the memorandum understanding your independence with regard to instituting litigation, settling litigation?
Yeah, that I served at the pleasure of the board, and I'm more than happy to furnish you a copy of
Okay.
the memorandum. I don't remember the exact details, but yeah, it was, this was Marty was not mentioned. He's not on the board, he's not on the.
But
he's
you
not a corporate
negotiated
officer.
this with Marty, though?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There
Okay.
wasn't anybody else to negotiate it with.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
so if you don't mind, I would like a copy of
Sure.
that. So I think I diverted you from your chronology and and what I'd like to just take a 5-minute break,
Sure.
and then come back, and I think we were at the point where you were describing the formation of the entity and the board, and your dealings at that time. So we're, I guess, still in early January or late January.
Late January, early February. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
How about a 5-minute
Okay.
restroom break?
Sure.
We're off the video record, 11:43 a.m.